get ready to uncover 3 of the most shocking and disturbing real-life stories about manipulation, control, and disillusionment in relationships. In this video, we reveal the hidden truth behind appearances, exposing the toxic tactics and warning signs you need to know to protect yourself from falling into emotional traps. We unravel the stories of people who have lived through true love nightmares, sharing their heartbreaking experiences and the valuable lessons they learned from them. Our goal is to bring to light the reality of toxic relationships, so you can recognize the signs early and avoid being manipulated. If you've ever felt confused, manipulated, or emotionally drained in a relationship, or if you want to learn how to protect yourself from these traps, this video is for you. Watch until the end for all 3 stories, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more impactful content like this. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. Do you believe in fairy tales? Do you think love always wins? Prepare to have your perspective shattered as we dive into these raw, real, and shocking stories. These are not just tales, they are true life accounts where manipulation and disillusionment reign. Have you ever felt like you were losing control of your own life, even though you were in a relationship? Like you were going in circles, unsure of what was happening? Welcome to the world of emotional manipulation. If this topic interests you, or if you've ever been through something like this, or you know someone who is going through it, subscribe to the channel for support, real stories, and the truth that often gets hidden. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. Your journey to self-awareness and emotional freedom starts right here, right now. But before we dive into the stories, let me ask you, do you know how to identify the signs of a toxic relationship? Those small actions, those subtle comments, that chip away at your self-esteem and trap you in insecurity? Let's dive deep into these 3 powerful stories and uncover the truth. Story 1, Anna and the manipulative care relationship. Anna, a young woman full of dreams and life, was always social, with a close circle of friends and a strong bond with her family. Her life was balanced, and she felt comfortable with the choices she had made. That was until one day, something changed. Anna met Joao. He was everything she had looked for in a man, a charming, attentive, intelligent, and always eager to please. At first, he seemed like the Prince Charming of her story. But over time, Joao began to show a different side, one that at first seemed very subtle, but which would soon become something much deeper and manipulative. It was always about care, as he would say. It was about protecting Anna, taking care of her, and helping her choose what was best for her life. Anna, at first, saw this as a gesture of love, as a sign that he genuinely cared about her. But as the months went by, something started to happen, and her friends began to disappear. They stopped inviting Anna out, and she didn't even notice the change, until one day, she realized she had lost contact with almost everyone. Joao began to show more and more possessiveness, but in a subtle way. He didn't directly tell Anna what to do, but his suggestions started to turn into disguised orders. He made her question everything she did, gradually undermining her self-confidence. If she went out with friends, he made her feel like she wasn't being a good girlfriend, and over time, Anna began to give in. Little by little, he used small lies, distorting facts, creating doubts about the intentions of Anna's friends and family. Joao would say, "They don't understand how much you need me. They just want to take you away from me." And Anna, lost in his words, started to believe him. Anna started distancing herself from her friends, preferring to stay alone with Joao. She believed that everything he did was for her own good, but the truth was, he was taking control. He would tell her what to wear, how to behave, and even what to say, especially in family gatherings. At first, she thought he was just trying to help her improve, that he knew what was best for her. But when Anna began to feel uncomfortable and tried to discuss her feelings, Joao quickly disarmed her with his sweet and charming words, "I only want what's best for you, Anna. I do this because I love you. You just need to trust me." He always had the perfect answer, the right words that made her feel guilty for questioning him. He made her feel like she wasn't grateful for all the care and protection he was offering. Over time, Anna began to feel confused. Her emotions were all over the place, but she couldn't understand what was happening. When she sat alone to reflect, a sense of emptiness overtook her. She no longer knew what was right or wrong, what was true or false. Her social circle shrank drastically, her parents began to notice the distance she had created between them, and even the few friends she had left started to drift away. Anna began to live for João, and the world she once knew, full of color and options, began to shrink to a single choice, his. Slowly, the pressure became unbearable. João no longer wanted her to work, claiming that she should stay home, taking care of him in the house so he could be the provider. If Anna expressed any desire to work or pursue something for herself, he always managed to convince her that she was being selfish and that her dreams weren't important. He constantly repeated, "I'm the man of the house, I know what's best for us. You don't need to worry about anything else." And again, Anna believed him. She found herself isolated, unable to resist. Whenever she tried to step out of João's control, he accused her of not being dedicated enough, of not being a good partner. He made her feel that her own needs and desires were insignificant. The constant comparison to his care, to the well-being he said he was providing, left Anna more and more without an identity. She felt weak, guilty, and unsure how to escape this web of manipulation. On a rainy afternoon, Anna had a moment of clarity. She was alone at home, sitting by the window, looking through the curtain, when her thoughts began to organize themselves. She realized that she no longer knew who she was without João. She didn't know what she liked to do, what she wanted from life. The only thing she knew was that every time she tried to do something for herself, João would get angry and manipulate the situation, making her feel wrong. She finally had the courage to ask herself, what happened to the woman I used to be? Anna decided she needed to confront João. She felt scared, but she knew she was losing herself and couldn't live this way anymore. When she tried for the first time to express her feelings of confusion and pain, he reacted with anger. "You don't understand anything, Anna. I'm just trying to protect you," he shouted, but Anna didn't back down. Something inside her was changing. She started questioning the constant criticism and control. She no longer wanted to be a puppet in someone else's hands, nor live under the constant shadow of fear and insecurity. She decided to seek help. It was then that Anna sought therapy. The therapist helped her understand what was happening in her life. She finally recognized what João was doing, and he was manipulating her, controlling her actions and feelings, all under the guise of care and protection. But the truth was, he was sinking her, isolating her from her family and friends, and making her doubt herself. She could no longer live like this. Anna began to take the first steps toward freedom. She broke up with João, and though it was painful, she knew it was the right decision. In the following months, she rebuilt her life, reconnecting with her friends and family, and, most importantly, reconnecting with who she really was. Today, Anna is a stronger, more aware woman. She knows how to identify the signs of manipulation and the boundaries needed to maintain her emotional and psychological health. Her story is a powerful reminder that often, what we call care can actually be a disguise for emotional control. And that's why, when we encounter situations like this, we need to have the courage to face the truth and, above all, remember that self-love is the key to freedom. Story 2, the case of Pedro, who was constantly humiliated and blamed by his partner. Pedro was a man who, at first, believed he had found the love of his life. His partner, Emily, was everything he had ever dreamed of. She was kind, beautiful, and seemed to have an innate understanding of his needs. Pedro had always struggled with self-doubt, but when he met Emily, it felt like she was the person who could help him overcome his insecurities. They moved in together, and for a while, everything seemed perfect. But, as time went on, things began to change. At first, it was subtle. Emily would make small, seemingly harmless comments about Pedro's appearance, his job, or his friends. "Are you really going to wear that?" she'd ask as he tried on a shirt, or "Do you really think you're good enough for that position at work?" Pedro brushed it off, thinking it was just her way of being protective. He loved her, and he wanted to believe she had his best interests at heart. However, these comments soon escalated. Emily began questioning his every move. "Why did you spend so much money on that? Or your friends don't really care about you, do they?" Slowly, Pedro started to feel like he couldn't make a single decision without consulting her. He began doubting himself at every turn, wondering if maybe she was right, if maybe his friends weren't really his friends, or if his appearance was truly inadequate. These thoughts, these doubts, started to take root in his mind. As the months went by, Emily's behavior became more controlling. She would demand to know where Pedro was at all times, and if he didn't respond immediately, she'd accuse him of hiding something from her. If he had a night out with friends, she would say, "Are you sure you're going to be okay without me?" Or, "I don't think I can trust you." Her words always came across as caring, as though she was worried about his well-being, but the more he heard them, the more they made him question his own actions and intentions. Pedro found himself constantly apologizing, even when he hadn't done anything wrong. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you," he would say after every argument, even if he had simply disagreed with her. He felt like he was walking on eggshells, afraid that the smallest mistake would send Emily into a fit of anger or disappointment. She would often tell him, "I'm only hard on you because I care. I want you to be the best version of yourself." But every time she said it, Pedro felt more and more like he was failing her. One day, Pedro's best friend invited him to go hiking. It had been months since he had done anything for himself, and he was excited to spend some time outdoors. But when he told Emily, she immediately became upset. "You going to leave me alone for the weekend? Do you really care about me, or are your friends more important?" Her voice trembled with hurt, and Pedro felt a pang of guilt. He cancelled the hike, choosing to stay home with her instead. But deep down, he knew he had made a sacrifice that he shouldn't have had to make. Days turned into weeks, and Pedro began to realize that he was losing himself. His confidence was shattered, and his independence was eroding. He became dependent on Emily for validation. Every decision he made, every word he spoke, was weighed against her approval. He had stopped hanging out with his friends, stopped pursuing his hobbies, and even stopped taking care of himself. Everything he did for her, hoping it would make her love him more, hoping that maybe, just maybe, she would stop criticizing him. One evening, Pedro tried to express how he felt. "I don't know who I am anymore," he said softly, his voice full of frustration. "I feel like I'm losing myself in this relationship." Emily responded with a cold smile, "You're just overthinking things. I'm just trying to make you a better person." But Pedro could see in her eyes that she wasn't listening. She wasn't trying to help him. She was controlling him. At this point, Pedro was barely holding on. He had become so dependent on her approval that he could no longer trust his own judgment. He felt like a shadow of the person he used to be. He avoided eye contact with his friends, constantly apologizing for every little thing, and questioning whether his thoughts and opinions were even his own. It felt like he was living in a fog, unable to break free from the emotional chains that Emily had slowly wrapped around him. There was a turning point, though. One day, Pedro was sitting at home, scrolling through his phone, when he came across an article about emotional abuse. As he read the descriptions of controlling behavior, humiliation, and manipulation, he felt a shock run through him. It was like a light bulb had gone off in his head. Everything he had been experiencing suddenly made sense. He had been emotionally abused, and the person doing it was the woman he thought loved him. Pedro didn't know what to do. He had become so isolated that he had no one to turn to. But the more he read, the more he realized that he wasn't alone. He wasn't the only one who had ever been manipulated in this way. There were others who had been trapped in toxic relationships, who had fought to regain their sense of self. And for the first time in months, Pedro felt a spark of hope. He reached out to his old friends, the ones Emily had pushed away, and began talking to them about what he had been going through. They were shocked, but they were also supportive. Pedro started seeing a therapist, someone who could help him rebuild his confidence and regain his independence. The process was long and difficult, but with each session, Pedro started to remember who he was before Emily's control had taken over. He learned how to recognize the signs of emotional manipulation, how to trust his instincts, and how to set boundaries. It wasn't easy, and there were setbacks along the way, but slowly, Pedro began to heal. He started spending time with his friends again, doing things that made him feel good about himself, and, most importantly, he started believing in his own worth. Eventually, Pedro broke up with Emily. It was a painful decision, but it was necessary for his well-being. He knew that in order to move forward, he had to let go of the relationship that had drained him for so long. It wasn't easy, but it was the first step towards reclaiming his life. Years later, Pedro looked back on his time with Emily with a sense of clarity. He understood that love was never supposed to feel like a burden. It was never supposed to make him feel small or insignificant. Love, real love, should empower and uplift, not control and diminish. Pedro had learned the hard way, but he was finally free. Today, Pedro is stronger and more confident than ever. He is no longer dependent on anyone's validation, and he knows that he deserves a relationship built on mutual respect, trust, and love. He now helps others who have experienced emotional abuse, sharing his story and offering guidance to those who are still struggling to break free. Pedro's journey is a testament to the power of self-awareness, healing, and the importance of knowing your own worth. It's a reminder that no one should ever allow themselves to be humiliated, manipulated, or controlled in the name of love. You are enough, just as you are. And if you find yourself in a similar situation, know that there is help available. You don't have to suffer in silence. There are people who care, and you deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. Story 3, the story of Maria, who lived in a relationship with a narcissist who used her to inflate his ego, discarding her when she was no longer useful. Maria was an intelligent and lively woman. She was always the type of person who gave her best in relationships, believing that true love was based on care, respect, and reciprocity. Throughout her life, Maria had been in relationships that taught her many lessons, but meeting Marco was different from anything she had ever experienced. Marco seemed to be everything she had always looked for. He was charming, confident, and appeared to treat Maria with an attention she had never encountered before. In the beginning, everything seemed perfect. Marco was attentive, always concerned with Maria's well-being. He knew how to make her feel special by praising her qualities, her achievements, making her feel unique. His words were always sweet and affectionate, and Maria felt like she was living in a fairy tale. She was so immersed in his attention that she barely noticed the subtle signs that started to appear. Over time, Marco's behavior began to change, but Maria didn't immediately recognize it. Marco started putting himself on a pedestal, frequently talking about how he was superior, smarter, and more capable than the people around him. He used Maria as a mirror, reflecting his own image and feeding off the qualities she possessed to feel better about himself. He would praise her when she did something that benefited him, but as soon as she stopped being useful, his behavior would change drastically. Maria began to realize that the relationship was becoming more and more one-sided. She was giving everything she could, attention, affection, love, but Marco seemed never satisfied. Every time she tried to express her own needs, he would minimize her feelings, often making her feel selfish for wanting something in return. He didn't want to hear about her difficulties or concerns. When Maria spoke about her emotions, Marco would quickly turn the focus back to himself, making her feel even more insignificant. "You're being dramatic. Don't be so sensitive," he would say with a cold smile, making Maria believe that she was exaggerating. The relationship became more oppressive. Marco controlled what Maria did, who she met, and even how she dressed. He encouraged her to distance herself from friends and family, telling her that they didn't understand how much he loved her and that only he knew what was best for her. He started comparing Maria to other women, constantly praising their qualities and making her feel inferior. She's much prettier, smarter, more interesting than you, did you know? Marco would say, without any shame, after a fight. Maria didn't understand how he could be so cruel, but at the same time, she didn't know how to break free from this web of manipulation. What Maria didn't know was that Marco was a narcissist. He used her to feed his ego, to make himself feel superior and powerful. Maria's needs were irrelevant to him. He treated her like an object, something useful only when he could benefit from her presence or support. If Maria did something that displeased him or didn't meet his expectations, he would discard her coldly, often ignoring her for days or even weeks. He made her feel as if she was always in debt to him, as if she were never enough. The situation worsened when Maria began to question the relationship. She could no longer tolerate the humiliations disguised as constructive criticism and the constant comparisons. When she tried to talk about her feelings, Marco would quickly disarm her with his sharp words. "You're so insecure. I don't know why you're making such a fuss, when everything I do is for you," he would say. Maria felt small, unable to respond. She felt like she was always wrong, like he was always right. It was then that, in a moment of clarity, Maria started to realize what was happening. During one of her therapy sessions, she had a powerful insight, and Marco didn't love her. He was using her to satisfy his own needs for validation and ego. When she stopped being useful, he discarded her like she was nothing. Maria began to recognize that she was in an abusive relationship, and this left her in shock. How had she allowed herself to be manipulated like this? How had she not seen the signs earlier? The awakening process was long and painful. Maria began to slowly distance herself from Marco, step by step. She began to realize how toxic the relationship had become. Little by little, she reconnected with her friends and family, people Marco had made her push away. She started to reclaim her own identity, the person she had been before Marco entered her life. She began to remember who she was without him, rediscovering her own values and passions. When Maria finally broke up with Marco, the sense of relief was overwhelming, but it was also filled with guilt. She felt as though she had wasted so much time in a relationship that destroyed her, but at the same time, she knew she was doing the right thing. She had regained her dignity and self-esteem, something Marco had stolen from her over the years. The recovery wasn't easy, but it was essential. Maria began to learn to trust herself again, to establish healthy boundaries, and to prioritize her own well-being. She began to study more about narcissism and emotional abuse, to better understand what she had lived through. She connected with other women who had gone through similar experiences, and this helped her understand that she was not alone. Today, Maria is a stronger, more aware, and more self-confident woman. She has learned the importance of respecting her own boundaries and never again allowing anyone to treat her as an object or a tool to feed someone else's ego. She now knows that true love is based on mutual respect, trust, and unconditional support, and it should never be used to diminish or control another person. Maria shares her story with others to help them recognize the signs of a narcissistic relationship before it's too late. She knows that by helping other women break free, she is creating a healthier world where love is experienced genuinely, and not as a tool of manipulation. Her journey was not easy, but she knows that she is now stronger than ever. She learned the hard way that no one deserves to be treated as a means to an end, and that true love is the kind that uplifts, respects, and accepts us for who we truly are. And it is with this learning that Maria moves forward, freer and happier than ever. These stories are just the tip of the iceberg. The reality is that many toxic relationships remain hidden, shrouded in silence and shame. But it doesn't have to be this way. You are not alone. The truth can set you free. If you identified with any of these stories, seek help. Talk to friends, family, or a professional. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Your mental and emotional health should be a priority. Share this video with your friends and family. Together, let's spread awareness and help break the cycle of manipulation and disillusionment. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Your journey to a healthier, happier future starts now.